Yo, what's up? How's it going? It's Carl, aka Carl Drum Tech. I'm here right now on Beverly Drive, walking to have lunch with my friend Huei-Yuan.
What's up, guys?
And this is gonna be a little bit different kind of vlog because I don't have my tripod today, but you know, we're gonna do something a little personal, a little more intimate, holding the camera, just like we did on our very first video blog.
Yeah.
So this is gonna be fun. So today, the topic that I wanted to talk about, with Huei, because I know that he's going to have some great insight into this topic, is the topic of quality of practice versus quantity of practice. And what I'm thinking about is, like, you know, in terms of length of time that you practice and the number of times that you practice. I think the concept is that, you know, sometimes we can practice so much that, you know, it can get monotonous. I've had somebody who was teaching with me at one time, and, you know, like, I know in a drumline situation teaching, like, I was like, hey, let's play eights. Oh, it's not perfect yet. So we're playing eights like for like an hour and a half, whatever. And then the guy who was I was teaching with is a little more experienced than me. You know, he saw some lines and stuff like that. And he said, you know, like you can't just do something like for long periods of time, otherwise the kids are gonna get bored, right? So like there's also that school of thought that, you know, like at some point you gotta move on. At some point it does get monotonous.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about something like about that concept?
It's hitting the point of diminishing returns, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's gonna get a point where even if you did it for longer, it's not gonna get better.
Sure.
That's not to shortchange the fact that quantity is super important. You do have to have that bit of time where you're just sitting there playing eights for an hour.
Sure.
You know? And your ability to still have returns, even though you've been doing it for an hour, that comes with maturity and experience, because you're still getting in. And part of being a really expert practice is recognizing when you've hit that point of diminishing returns,
right,
and knowing that you need to move on to the next thing.
Right. I think there was one time I was first started teaching, you know, at the high school, and I brought my old drumline instructor back to kind of help me out, and we were getting ready for like our last performance or some kind of competition, and we were just like rehearsing. I was maybe even going over the time we're supposed to end.
Yeah.
And then, you know, my old drumline instructor's name is Dave Gonzalez. He's like, you know, dude, they're not really gonna get much better at this point. Like, you're just gonna have to just accept it as it is and just let them go. So, you know, what do you think about that?
You know, I definitely go down swinging. Like, I am trying to fix things to the very last second. I never just say like, okay, well, this is what it is.
Sure. Okay.
But there definitely is that point where you have to understand that as you get closer to the performance, you're not going to make huge strides.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, like, you rehearse very differently during summer training than you do
right before a show.
July.
Right.
Very differently from finals week.
Yeah.
Right. And so I would say I agree with that to the extent that when you get closer to certain deadlines, you're going to rehearse differently. But I just wanted to make sure that people don't misinterpret that to say, like, stop trying to fix things.
Sure, of course. And then you can always be better. You can always try to, you know, like, and sometimes even if the improvement is small, sometimes it's still worth it.
The improvement might even be like you're not fixing things or you're not cleaning things necessarily. Maybe you're just trying to raise your performance energy, or you're trying to improve your consistency. You're always trying to make things better. You know, it's funny. I was actually just talking to my kids about this the other day. You know, like, why do we repeat things? And I said this out loud because I think for some people they don't put two and two together, which especially for younger kids is that every time you repeat something, the intention is to make it better or to make it more consistent. Consistency and improvement. Sometimes you meet students who haven't gotten this lesson and they just do things over and over and over again. They think through just repetition it'll solidify.
Right.
But you have to be intentionally, we call this intentional practice. You have to actually be thinking about or trying to make something better or more consistent.
But for a young student, as you know, right, that can be very difficult to sell the kids on doing something over and over and over again, because, you know, again, we bring up the topic of monotony and, you know, how it's just the same thing over and over again. Like, where's the interest in that? Right?
Yeah. Well, we talk about celebrating the struggle, celebrating the process, and
which is actually a very mature concept.
Yeah, which is super mature. But the key to that is to make sure that they experience the win. Right? If you do something 20 times and at the end of 20 times it isn't any better than it was before, then of course you're not going to want to do things over and over again, right? Of course. So let's say you rep it, and every time you rep it, it gets a little bit better. And at the end of 20 reps, you're way better than when you started. Then of course they're going to want to repeat things, right? And the key as a teacher is to set up whatever task you have them rep make sure it's something that's going to pay off at the end of 20 reps.
Absolutely. We just ordered our food, so we're getting ready to have our lunch right now. But before the food comes, let's continue on with our conversation about practice. And me and Wei had an interesting conversation about, how there are studies done on quantity of practice or quality of practice versus quantity. So talk about some of the things that you've seen, publication-wise or article-wise that have been helpful to this kind of topic.
Yeah, it was a research article that made me go, oh my gosh, because for the longest time I was on a path to become a performer/performance major, which is what I did my master's in.
Right.
But I read this article in my pursuit to become a performer that just completely changed my world in terms of why music education research is important. And the title of the article was, "It's not how much, it's how." I think it's maybe 2009 from the Journal of Research in Music Education by Robert Duke and Amy Simmons. And they tracked 17 musicians and watched them practice. And this ranged from undergraduates, I think there's some master's students and maybe some doctoral students too. And before I read this, I was like, oh, well, the doctoral students are the ones that are going to be the most successful in how they retain their practice. And they charted them, they watched, they charted several different things, like how much time they spend practicing. And that's the big thing, right? Usually people say the more you practice, the better you're going to be. Mm-hmm. And then the test was they had them practice, and they watched them practice. They could do whatever they wanted during the practice session, and they tracked their correct repetitions, their, I think they call it, it's another name, but almost correct repetitions, and their incorrect repetitions. And then they had them come back the next day to see who could do it the most accurately, who could play the same excerpt the following day the most accurately.
Right.
And I'm thinking, oh, well, the doctoral students are going to kill it. They're going to be the ones that are the most successful. But it turns out that it was a mix. It was one doctoral student was the most successful, but there was also an undergrad who was the most successful. I thought, whoa, okay, there's a nugget of something in there, because as an undergrad going into my master's program, I was thinking, what can I do to catch up and get myself further ahead?
Yeah.
And what it turns out, this was the big takeaway that I took from this article, which was the people, as they watched them practice the previous day, the people who logged the most correct repetitions were the most successful the following day. Or there was at least a correlation between the two.
Right.
And further, this is more out of just my fear of public embarrassment, was that there were actually doctoral students who had 0 correct repetitions from the previous day.
Really?
Yeah, now before you go oh my gosh, I can't believe that they did that.
Yeah.
Think of how many times you've practiced and almost gotten something right. You're oh, that's close enough, and then you move on.
Sure, of course,
right?
all the time.
Or even a more common thing that happens is you do it wrong 10 times, and then you do it right once, and then you go, I got it, and then you move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Right? You're literally your ratio to incorrect or correct repetitions was 10 to 1. If you had to bet money on if you were going to do it again correctly, statistically, it's against you to do it correct again. Right. Instead, the saying more commonly is do it correctly. So do it right so many times that you can't do it wrong.
Right. Absolutely.
Do it 20 times right instead of 20 times wrong and then 1 time right.
And now, does that have a correlation with the length of practice? In that if you have a lot of time, you tend to be well, I have a lot of time, so I can't have some incorrect repetitions. Or if you have less time, you gotta be yo, I gotta maximize the time that I have, and get all the minimum amount of reps that I have to do it correctly.
Yeah, that's actually what it is, right? If you're mature about it, if you have 10 minutes, your job is to maximize the correct repetitions.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that looks good.
Do you want any
The wrapping thought is, if you have 5 minutes to practice, you have to be smart about what you're going to try to accomplish in those 5 minutes. If you try to bite off a huge chunk in 5 minutes, you're going to fix. But then that forces you to go faster, or to only kind of do it right 3 or 4 times, or actually do it wrong 5 times and do the next thing. You may as well just not practice for those 5 minutes. In fact, you're probably doing more harm than good.
Interesting.
You're teaching yourself the wrong habits for those 5 minutes.
Right.
Or if you've got 5 minutes, bite off a really small chunk. I'm going to practice these 2 measures. I'm going to break it down these 5 different ways. I'm going to do it right 20 times.
Right.
End your 5 minutes, and you can leave knowing that you got some good work done during those 5
Absolutely.
minutes.
And I think this goes along the same school of thought that, because when I was with the troopers, Pete Sabaton came up with the devised this is in a warm-up situation. Let's say for whatever reason we only have 10 minutes in the lot, or we have 20 minutes, or versus 30 minutes, versus an hour, right? And then he has a chart of okay, we're only gonna play these exercises if we have less time, But if we have more time, we're gonna play all the exercises, and he has mapped it out, like, we're gonna like rep it like, this many times, that kind of thing. Which I think is also very similar to, like, let's say you are getting ready for a show, and like for us, like, let's say we had an early performance time of like 2 p.m. And then plus the travel time and loading time and stuff like that. Like, we might meet at the high school like early in the morning, and then we might be lucky with an hour practice before we can leave. In those situations, obviously you wouldn't want to go through like try to get through everything that you normally do in a rehearsal. Like, you would just like pick like the trouble spots, maybe like 1 or 2 phrases, and you just work on those for the next 2 hours. And even just like and also warm-up time, you have less warm-up time, so you could just, maybe I might even be like, hey, warm up on your own, just get warm as quickly as you can, and then like and then let's get going. So like have you done anything similar, or like what's your experience on less warm-up or practice time versus more?
Well, let me come back to that. Let me just share a nugget of wisdom that I learned. It didn't make as much sense to me when I was a marching member. It made more sense when I started teaching in PCI.
Sure.
Which this comes from Alan Miller, who's the arranger for the front ensemble for the Cavaliers. He was my Cavalier. He was the pit tech when I marched in Cavaliers in the front ensemble. Also arranges for Cavalier no percussion. And what he said was, you don't clean the entire show in one day. You have 90 days on the road. You have to be selective of which days you spend on what excerpts, right? If you try to clean the entire book, the entire 11 minutes every day, nothing is ever going to get clean. Right? Instead, you've got to pick and choose. And the way I applied this idea when I was teaching at Regiment was, you have your high impact moment, your high yield, high demand. Like, this is going to be a process.
High exposure.
These are the must be perfect sections, and they're going to take a lot of breakdown. They're going to take a lot of reps. This is going to take time. Those are on our dailies. Like, we've got to hit these sections every day.
Right.
But maybe this week we're going to clean letter A to letter C. And this week, like, that is our section that we're going to break down. We're going to clean every day for a week. And once it's fixed and once it's cleaned, it's clean. Check it off the list. And we might need to maintain it throughout the season. But you spend the time it takes to make sure that part is really, really solid. And then you just go through. It's like cleaning. It's like cleaning. The analogy for cleaning, it's literally cleaning. You don't take a rag and just go like this and wipe it all over the table. Right? Even though your whole table is just dirty now. You've got to start one section and you slowly polish or wax the car, and it's a process.
And going back to that analogy, like, when you have that spot clean, you're hyping on that. And you're like, yes, that spot is so clean. I'm like so hyped to get the rest of the table done, so let me get to the next section.
Exactly. So powerful. We were talking about students earlier, right? Now they have something as a benchmark. Something to say like, this is clean. Everything else needs to be that.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
I'll just get that number. I don't want to reach
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
There it is. So what are we having for lunch today, Wei? What is your food of choice?
I got a veggie burger. It's like their quinoa burger. But this is my trademark move. Whenever I get a veggie sandwich, I'll add some meat to it. So I got bacon with my veggie sandwich.
Nice. And I got a fish cod sandwich. We're here at Burger Lounge right now, so if I can recommend and shout out this place, Burger Lounge has some great burgers, good quality food. If you guys ever have a chance to check out this place, make sure you do that. I normally get the turkey burger, but once in a while they have like a cool seasonal or temporary item like a cod sandwich, and I've had it once and it's super good. It's got some tartar sauce. It's money. So let's wrap it up here right now. Is there any other parting words that you can give that would be of value to students and instructors alike, which I think we've done that throughout this whole video?
Yeah. If you reference the first time we kind of hung out at LACMA on Instagram, Carl's got this video, and I said, he's like, do you have one phrase? And this is still the phrase I go back to, which is slow and correct is better than fast and wrong.
Yes.
As a teacher, when you're running your private lessons, your job is to sequence and prioritize things for your students so that you're maximizing their correct repetitions. You're teaching them how to practice so that when they go home, they can replicate correct repetitions. Students, your job when you're practicing on your own is to keep a tally. How many correct repetitions can you do? And I play a game with my students, which is, think of it like Jeopardy. Like when you watch Jeopardy, if you get a question wrong, what happens? you lose money, right?
lose money.
You go negative. If you get it right, you get money.
Yeah.
Right. And so do a little mental game with yourself. I do this with like goldfish or Skittles with my students. I'll put a pile of them out, and every time they do a correct rip, I'll push one into their pile.
Yeah.
And every time they do it wrong, I take it back and I pull it back into my pile. And the
Right.
goal is to finish with a bigger pile of goldfish or Skittles than we started with. It's just a way of logging correct repetitions.
Nice.
Log correct repetitions.
Nice. And to kind of piggyback on that thought, you know, what I do with my students is, you know, like, if whenever you're playing something, you know, I always tell them, I don't care how slow you play something.
Yes.
Just play it right. I don't care if it's like so slow, like da digga da da digga. I don't care. Like, as long as you do it right, that's the most important thing.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yo, thank you guys so much for watching this video. It's really cool to have Huei join in again on one of my video blogs. It's always cool to have him. He always has great insight, great knowledge, and you know, it's hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this video. Just as much fun as we had doing it. Also, you know, we're getting ready for our normal weekly lunch with Huei and Carl that is on Periscope. So if you guys aren't following us on Periscope, make sure you guys do that. Huei-Yuan Pan is his account. Mine is Carl Drum Tech. So go check this out every Wednesday for lunch, and we just, you know, talk some stuff and like talk random stuff, talk about life. Sometimes we talk about drum stuff, but mostly it's a chance to get to know us both. So again, thank you guys for checking it out. As always, like the video, comment, subscribe, share. That would be dope. Really appreciate it. And also, you can find Huei also on YouTube as well. So make sure you like and comment. He's got some video blogs from his recent trip to WGI Finals that are really good. Well done. So
Thank you.
make sure you guys check that out as well on his account. So, all right, peace out. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.
Bye, guys.